I hope you got my hand signals, all of you. Welcome to each of you who are here. No disrespect to anybody, especially members of the Perry family. I believe I'm looking at a number of grandchildren and others, so we're delighted to have all of you here tonight. I'll call the meeting to order at 6:02 for our meeting of City Council for the date of August 1st, 2017. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Downey.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Kidd.
Here.
Councilmember Brooke.
Present.
Councilmember Collins.
Here.
Councilmember Gase.
Present.
Councilmember Meredith.
Here.
Councilmember Wetton.
Here.
Manager McKean.
Here.
Attorney Bloor.
Here.
Okay. I have not yet invited someone to offer the Pledge of Allegiance, but I'll first off ask Councilmember Gase if you would to do that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As I've said on a number of occasions during my tenure here, we've come to a part of the agenda for me, and I think for many others, it's a very special and honoring opportunity for us as members of the council and those of you who come to our meetings to recognize special achievement, to better understand some wonderful people who have given a great deal to this community. It was my pleasure for all too short of a time, to serve with Don Perry on the council. Don served as deputy mayor in the early years of my tenure, and Don was one of my mentors. I've come to know members of the Perry family for many years now. So it's going to be our pleasure and our blessing this evening to recognize Don Perry. I've invited our Deputy Mayor, Sherry Kidd, who has worked for many years with Don Perry during the time they served together, worked together, and served this community during Heritage Days and in conjunction with the underground tours. So I've invited Sherry to come to the dais in my stead, recognizing their special relationship. And turn the mic over to Sherry for an opportunity to recognize Don Perry for his many years of community service in the creation of the Peninsula underground tours. Sherry?
Thank you. Tonight's a special night for all of us. Don Perry and I ran for city council at the same time, and his campaign signs had a little top hat on them because Don dressed up for his underground tours and took you back in history, literally back in history. And it was very exciting for him. So I'll be reading a proclamation, and I'd like Don's family to come up and join us for this, because this is a very special time. And if you and his family was very much a part of his life and his passion, right, Judy? Yes. Yes. And many times Don and I worked on Heritage Week downtown, and I would be one of the guides, and we just had such a love of the underground, and Don was infectious. There's people all over the world that have taken the underground tours with Don, and they tell everyone who will listen what a marvelous experience it was here in Port Angeles. So we have a special proclamation tonight. We have a lot of things. We're going to start with this. A proclamation in recognition of the designation of Don Perry Way, which is very exciting. Whereas Don Perry has been fascinated by the early history of Port Angeles ever since he first heard about stories of the innovative development of our downtown. And Jackson Smart, who had the designation of the mayor of the Underground at that time, it was and Jackson took him down into the Underground and showed him around, and Don fell in love with it. He just was, oh my gosh, I had no idea. This is fabulous. Why is it such a big secret? So his interest turned into a passion as his desire to preserve our city's unique past became a business he called Port Angeles Heritage Tours. Now, when you're on your tour, you get Don kind of morphs into a historical figure himself. He just, when he starts talking, he takes you there. He takes you back to 1914 in the beginning of our Underground. So Don's commitment to preserving the history and legacy of the Port Angeles Underground has captivated the interest of people from all around the world. His Underground tours have unearthed stories from the past that have brought attention to a part of our city that had long ago been covered up. And whereas Don recognized and appreciates the efforts of the engineers and laborers who worked tirelessly on the project to improve our downtown, he shared this monumental accomplishment through his passionate and entertaining accounts of the 1914 project, when the city was raised up off the downtown, our downtown city then was raised up off the tidal flats, actually 14 feet and 1 story, using water cannons to blast away the hillside and guide the slurry through wooden forms in order to fill and raise the area downtown, what was referred to as sluicing of the hogback. Hogback was the great big hill approaching downtown. Whereas through his advocacy to preserve this part of our city's history for future generations, combined with his contagious enthusiasm and gift for storytelling, he brought history to life with his accounts of yesteryear, and over time, he built a business where he was able to share his passion for our city's history. And whereas Don had the ability to engage an audience with his contagious energy as he eagerly shared little-known facts about Port Angeles, he also had a great sense of humor, so he made it really, really fun. So whether you were new to town or a long-time resident, you were guaranteed a great time on Don's tours and were sure to learn many things new about our city. Now, therefore, Patrick Downey Mayor, on behalf of the entire City Council of the Port Angeles, we do hereby approve the designation of the underground portion of Port Angeles to be known as Don Perry Way. This designation is a token of our appreciation, because we all miss him, for Don's efforts to highlight the significant engineering, I didn't mean to make you cry, but that's okay, it's a happy cry, to highlight the significant engineering feats of our forefathers and an offer of gratitude for Don's willingness to share Port Angeles' unique history throughout his heritage tours throughout the world. So thank you, my dear. All right. Now to stay put, I think we're going to have a short, fun film.
to raise the city of Port Angeles. And it was an endeavor that the whole town got involved in. We have the remnants of what's there now. As we look out these windows, we can imagine what our forefathers looked at. This was the sidewalk. You used to look across the street at the Aldwell building. We have what's left of the debris from what is the sidewalk forms that they did in 1920 when they made the concrete sidewalks that created the underground. It's quite a picture to see. We have the skylights up above, and as we speak, the person just walked across the skylight. You can actually see the physical body walking across. As I look out the window at where the sidewalk used to be, it can't help but get a little chill running down your spine just to realize what our forefathers went through that made the fascinating story of the Port Angeles Underground.
And now we have some further presentations. We're going to ask our city manager, Dan McKean, to come up, and Bruce Erlwein. Bruce is currently the tour guide for Heritage Tours because Don sold his company to Blackball Ferry Line, and so the tours continue. And so Bruce continues the tour. Bruce is originally from Port Angeles. He was in service for 12 years before, and he's been doing tours for about a year and a half. Now, Bruce made an instant connection with Don, and he was trained on the tour, so he does a fabulous job carrying on our history. So, Mr. McKee.
Well, thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you to his family. I have the honor and privilege, just like many people in this room, to know Don when he was on City Council, at the Port Angeles Speedway Rotary event. Guys Night Out, we won't talk a lot about that, but one thing that he always had, and it was stated in the proclamation very well, is a passion, no matter what he did. But he couldn't have done what he did within the community and without the backing of his family. He spent a lot of time benefiting this community. He cared deeply about Port Angeles, its history, its citizens, and he gave a lot. But I know that that you also gave a lot with him, which was Don, and we really, really appreciate that. I know I personally do, and everybody else does. There are a couple things that the community wanted to make sure you had as part of tonight. Bruce, you want to help me?
Absolutely.
You can get the heavy one. So the first is the proclamation, but it's also, and we're going to talk about the sign later, but and a little bit of the underground, and it's framed for you to just have here. And the heavy one that Bruce has is some pictures representing the history of the downtown and some of the passion, obviously, that Don talked about all the time. And okay, so Bruce, you want to talk about the sign? That'd be great. Yeah, I'll hit the sign. You can talk about it.
All right, thank you. All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Bruce, and I took over the Port Angeles Underground Heritage Tour from Don Perry. And I think it's actually pretty impressive the amount of work that Don went through to do this. As I start to sift through some of the information, I try to uncover history myself, I'm starting to realize exactly how difficult that challenge was. At the time, it was just an opportunity to make a livable city, to make ourselves economically viable. Unfortunately, that's all it was, and a lot of it's been lost to history. At the time, the oral tradition has been passed down, it's now generations old, and at the time, photographic documentation wasn't as common as it is today. But Don did a great job of actually being able to preserve our history, and we're incredibly grateful for his family that had to endure so much of that frustration with him. But this sign, Don Perry Way, this is absolutely incredible to me for a couple of different reasons, but we all know Don Perry absolutely had a flair for life in the public. And so we're going to take this sign, we're actually going to display it someplace very prominent so everybody who walks through the underground streets can see exactly why or exactly who was the person responsible for so much preservation of our history. And so with that, there's the sign.
you all. And, you know, we love you guys, and thanks so much. You're all a special part of our town. And John will always be. Thank you, Ricky. Now we go.
Well, that was wonderful. Very appropriate tribute to a great guy. I've just been informed that there's no one has signed up on the sign-up sheet out there, but with that said, I'm going to, in a moment or two, I'm going to open up our first two public comment periods. We'll let one later in the meeting. But I want, before I do that, I need to read something that I may not read this at every meeting, but I need to read it beginning tonight, in part because tonight is the election night, and then following this evening will be in earnest campaigns for positions on our city council and other and other matters before the electorate later in November. And so let me take care of some housekeeping here for a moment, if you will, please. It's a notice to all participants who come to city council meeting, our city council meetings, and I presume this, what I'm about to read will be read at, and should be read at each city council meeting throughout the state of Washington. Quote, state law prohibits the use of public facilities to assist candidates campaign or to promote or oppose a ballot proposition. The public comment period segments of city council meetings are, quote, public facilities and cannot be used to assist a candidate's campaign or to promote or oppose a ballot proposition. The public comment segments of the city council meetings are reserved for comments on issues related to official city business and cannot be used to discuss election campaign issues. End quote. So, and there will be, as there was this evening, there is a similar statement posted on the, well, just above the sign-in sheet that is out there. So I am going to open a public comment period at 6:20. It's intended to last up to 15 minutes as may be necessary. As usual, each and all that may, not regardless of whether anyone signed up, there may be someone in this audience this evening who wishes to make a comment. You have 3 minutes. The green light will come on. The yellow light represents about 2.5 minutes, and then the red light represents 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record and your street address. So, with all that said, is there anyone who failed to sign up on the sheet that would wish to address the council this evening? You're all a very quiet group. I'll ask one more time. Is there anybody who would like to speak at this first of our two public comment periods? I didn't see anybody rising from their chairs, so that's we have matters of business that we need to take care of. If we get home a bit earlier, that will not be a bad thing either. So we'll move on. It takes us to late items to be placed on this or future agendas. Is there a member of the council who wishes to do that? Brad, I saw you here first.
Well, I just wanted to note there should be a correction. Consent agenda has July 3rd, not June 27th minutes.
You know about the city council minutes?
Yes. I'm just saying the agenda needs to be corrected.
Yes. Thank you. Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add 2 items with the approval or consensus of council tonight. It's August 1st. I'd like to hear about our city pier update regarding the new float installations. I don't know if that would be appropriate this evening, if we could get a verbal update, or in another 2 weeks, we could have something actually prepared in our agenda. And the other thing is I would ask council's approval for an excusal by myself to attend the vote count release at the auditors at or about 7:30 p.m. this evening.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Jim.
2 items. First, I think, no, we should have Councilmember Witham have to stay here until 9 o'clock at least. No, then I'd be in favor of letting them go. And also, I was hoping that we could get an update from staff with regards to any tentative dates that might have been set for the emergency preparedness workshop.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we excuse Mr. Witham at 7:30.
Second.
Anybody against that? So Lee, you are able to leave early.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
We may be out of here ourselves by that same time, with any of up here. Anybody else? I didn't see anybody on the right, on my left side.
Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to, under late items, when you get to consent, we have one item we do not need to pull from the agenda. I just need to give you a correction on the emergency declaration on the memo, and that will only take a couple minutes. Again, I just want to provide a correction before we approve the consent agenda.
All right, well, that does take us to the consent agenda. That will be on our agenda this evening.
I'm sorry, Mayor, and we do have one late item from our Parks Director. It's HVAC improvements, and there's a timing issue, and that's why we're bringing it to you tonight, which will be explained. That would go under contracts and purchasing as the 6th item on the agenda. And the title would be HVAC Improvements, Port Angeles Senior Center and Fine Arts Center.
And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to request that we pull consent agenda item number 4, not from the vote, but for a brief discussion before the vote.
And I would like that to happen for number 3 as well.
So number 3, for further discussions, and the other one was?
Number 4.
Number 4, facilities, okay.
And actually, now that I look at number 3 in my notes that I wrote in there, I actually would like that pulled out of there.
Excuse me?
I would like to pull it out of the consent agenda.
Which one?
Number 3.
3. Okay. All right, well, I will read those that remain. The consent agenda items read.
Could we discuss number 4 briefly? Because I didn't want to pull that out of the vote. I just wanted to discuss it.
Oh, okay, that one, we can do that.
Okay, so that'll just take a moment. The facility use agreement with William Shore Memorial Pool. I just wanted to point out that this is really a great opportunity for partnerships, interagency partnerships, in this particular case, the city and William Shore Pool. And we do have the pool executive director, Steve Burke, in the audience, and he would like to take just a brief moment to address the council before we vote on this. And Steve, would that be okay?
Great, thank you so much. I'd just like to give my appreciation to the city staff and especially Corey Delicott to got this use agreement done really quickly. This resulted from a couple of the after-school care programs closing down in our community, and it's kind of at a crisis stage right now of not having after-school care available. And thankfully, we have someone on our staff, Christy Wojnowski, who's right there, has done this a lot. And so we decided to talk with Corey about partnering to do an after-school care program that we would staff and run, but we would use Vernon Burton as well as our facility as well. And so we're able to get that stood up. We'll start by the beginning of the school year, and we should be able to alleviate some of that pressure that's on some of the daycares now that can't take any more kids.
Thank you.
I guess I'd like a comment there. I did notice that it said any of the profits made would go directly back into the program, so I think that's a wonderful reinvestment back into the community and all, and back into this program I know we desperately need. So thank you very much for doing that.
Well, we appreciate the city wanting to partner on this, especially in such a quick manner. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Well, Mr. Mayor, since we are discussing them, perhaps we should have item number 6 from the city manager discussed before we...
yeah, let's just do that. I'm okay with that.
Okay, so it's on page E34 of your packet. There is one correction. When we first talked to our risk pool WCIA, the insurance deductible that's mentioned in the memo under funding, we were told it was $10,000. Well, there are various segments of the insurance. The area of the event that we're in now, which is event management, actually has a deductible of $25,000. So we were able to find that out. We did confirm that, and I just wanted to provide that correction to the council. We'll also have, under information, a verbal update, a more comprehensive verbal update on the event itself. So again, I wanted to provide that correction to the council.
Thank you, Dan.
Yes, Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I just want to address the community. This is in regards to the security breach with the credit card system, that we're taking action on this particular item this evening. So I want the community to be aware that we're working through this. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, I do have a question on item number 5, which had to do with the sanitary sewer and the storm drain cleaning. And my question was that I know that the low bid was for the $41,192, and I know that also we want to give the maximum value of $60,000. So I guess the difference between the low bid and the maximum expenditure, when I was reading this, I understood that you guys had, I guess, set sort of, was it the number of pipes that were going to get cleaned out? Was
So
just an example?
so everybody was bidding on the same thing. We gave a sample distance and pipe sizes and so forth for them to bid on. And then based on that sample size, they provided their bid with the award going to the lowest bid. And then we would then create work orders or project orders for the actual piping under those bid amounts up to a maximum of $60,000.
So, and I guess this is a question like for the future when we are guided by the comprehensive plan as to how much we spend. So $60,000 that we have outlined for certain pipes, I was just wondering if we'll be able to identify pipes and projects by a set amount rather than a dollar amount, and as to how we're deciding to spend our money, whether it's just, does this mean that we're going to get to all the pipes you want, or does this mean that we're going to be really short of how many pipes that you're going to need to get done?
We based on $60,000 on comes out to a rough estimate of how pipe distances we want to do in a year. Could we do more? I mean, we'd like to do more, sure, but we kind of have to balance how much we spend in a given year based on rates, and then we choose, when was the last time we surveyed the pipes, and the oldest ones get the survey next, and It has proven to be very beneficial where we're finding cross connections that we knew were there, but we couldn't find them until we put the cameras down there.
No, I think the project itself is really, really valuable. I'm just saying, in the future, how do we go ahead and tie this? Because I know part of our comprehensive plan means is that we have to maintain our infrastructure. So how is it that we're going to budget in the future so that we can do this and actually keep up with the need that we have to get this kind of project done?
Councilmember Brooke, as a guy that works with drain pipes for a living, I am sure that staff is basing their needs quite a bit from the response needed to the jetback truck, number one. Number two, because we do have an aging infrastructure in sewer pipes. For instance, I've got a house built in the 1970s, and I actually had to go rent a snake and get the tree roots out of my piping. I'm sure that occurs throughout our city. So unfortunately, due to trees' growing habits, some years you got good growth where they do go into the pipes and others where they don't. So I appreciate the asking about it, but there is no way to tell that. So it's going to be on a minimum response needed, and I'm sure staff is basing that on the requirements of how many service calls that they've done on the sewer mains that go throughout our city that we're responsible to upkeep. So again, I can only speak from a professional opinion on this thing.
Okay, I believe I understand this to be going to, on the consent agenda, we are left with everything, with the exception of item 3, the Elks parking lot repair, which we have pulled off the consent agenda. I will read 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. City Council minutes of June 3rd, 2017, and July 18th, 2017. Expenditure report from July 8th, 2017 to July 21, 2017 in the amount of $1,385,324.43. Facility use agreement with the William Shore Memorial Pool. 2017 sanitary sewer and storm drain cleaning and CCTV contract SVC 2017-22, an award, and the emergency declaration ratified. All those in favor of the consent agenda as presently read, please say aye.
I'll make the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I'll second that.
Just a point of clarification. I may have heard it wrong, but it's July 3rd.
July 3rd, not
What
June.
did I say? What did I say? Oh, you're right.
July
It is July 3rd. I read it as it was on the paper. Let me read that again. That's item 1, City Council minutes of July 3rd, 2017, and July 18th, 2017. as corrected.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further questions? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that takes us back to Elks parking lot repair.
I think that item should go to I1, shouldn't it? I was thinking it should get put on the agenda as item I1,
We can do that.
other considerations.
Okay. We have no public hearings this evening, so we'll go to the ordinances not requiring council for public hearings.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, I asked that new floats, that we discuss new floats.
We could do that now, if you, people or others are comfortable with that, that's fine.
I think we should discuss that under item I-2, we're going to discuss it tonight.
Mr. Gardner, that's not an ordinance.
I-2 is other considerations.
Right. Other consideration.
But is Cordell prepared to talk about that tonight, or next meeting?
I can tell the council right now that the floats are being constructed, but I will know more in 2 weeks, so I'd be more than happy to provide some information at the next council meeting.
I don't we hold off. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, look for you. All right, well, that's done. I think there's going to be a lot of people very happy about that when it happens. Okay, now we're back to G, ordinance is not requiring solid waste ordinance revision for private property cleanup. That's G1 in our packet.
Did you read the ordinance?
Sounds like it. This will be a second reading of the ordinance. And then we'll take up the matter. Are there any questions of staff before I do read the ordinance? Is there anything?
There was one question from the last council meeting of whether this should be in chapter 13, where we put it, staff put it in chapter 8, where it was recommended, to put it. So we decided to keep it into chapter 13. The reasons are outlined in the council memo. This ordinance is countywide, chapter 13 is countywide, chapter 8 is city regulation, so it really doesn't fit under city regulations since it applies across the county. And again, chapter 13 is also about rates and the solid waste utility, where chapter 13 is about rates and operations, financing, solid waste utility. Well, chapter 8 is about regulations and focused on city nuisances.
Okay, let me read the ordinance. An ordinance of the City of Port Angeles, Washington, amending 13.57.020 regarding solid waste rates and cleanup of nuisance properties.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the ordinance as read, and I'd also like to comment that we did receive quite a lot of positive public comment at the last meeting, and I think there's many efforts that are going on in the community that will benefit from this, and was demonstrated by public comment.
And I'll second that and agree with that. This is a really wonderful ordinance to go ahead and move us forward to cleaning up the city.
Any further discussion with the council on this matter? Okay, a motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That takes us to item I, other considerations. We'll start with that item taken off the consent agenda. That's the Elks parking lot repair. Sissy, it was you that asked it.
I did. I was looking at this, and so we've got to repair this parking lot because it needs it. And I know that we do have a lot of needs. The thing that came to my attention about this is that we did put a bid out there, and we only got one bid, and it's higher than what we estimated it to be. And we had another item as well in our packet that was exactly in the same manner. And so we decided, I guess the option is that we can go ahead and note that the above estimate is, it's high, it's a single one, and maybe attributed to a lack of availability during the summer months. Because right now, this is the busy construction season. And so if we rebid this in another month or two, where the construction season slows down, we might be able to get more than one bidder and maybe closer to the estimate. I don't know, that was just a thought, it might be completely wrong.
The reason why there's only one bidder is, unfortunately, there's only
one contractor that makes asphalt in County. And it would have to be, there are other outside companies that do come to town, they're still buying their product from Lakeside, so I don't know if that's great for them or not, but it also is the middle of construction season. And then when did this go out for bid?
I think it was about a month ago. And there are a couple other things we need to consider is, whenever we're working downtown, we have to try and fit the construction in amongst the various events, holidays, and so when we start delaying it till October or November, I mean, weather gets to be a problem, holidays get to be a problem, so we try and fit it, maybe August or right after September, where, yes, there's a lot of business going on downtown, but not as many major events. So, the closing of the parking lot doesn't affect them as much as when it's around the holidays. So we play this dance of when we can take parking lots offline. Again, yeah, Lakeside is the only asphalt provider, so we have those issues of sole source. The other issue is, as you noted, we originally had a budget estimate of $30,000, and that was based on just some simple asphalt removal replacement. A lot more damage out there. They're going to have to dig up the asphalt, dig up the roots, dig up the sub-base, put more down, and then we'll be putting in a root barrier, which I had not thought of, but my engineers thought of, to prevent the roots from coming back into the parking lot and prevent future damage.
I'd like to comment from, again, my professional background. It is timing, availability for our downtown merchants to lose that lot. We need to actually, that should probably be our prime motivator on letting this go. So we need to keep that available again for our merchants. The dollar amount, $66,000. It is a lot to us, but actually in the big scheme of things, it's not that much. So we are subject to a sole source provider, as I think Craig pointed out. Lakeside has a very good reputation within our community. I support going forward with this at that price. Again, Craig identified additional items that weren't identified in the engineer's estimate, so I would support this going forward as proposed.
Deputy Mayor Kuhn and then Brian Collins.
This is a priority parking lot in our downtown, and I really am anxious to get this repaired and upgraded. The tree roots add additional costs, but we have to take care of it, so I'm anxious to get it done. I think it's going to be a huge benefit to not only our downtown, but our entire community, because everyone uses that lot. So the sooner we get it done, the better, and so I'm for it. Thank you.
It's a similar comment, that is, it's a pretty important parking lot, it's well used, it needs to be brought up to use at proper standards, and we can't afford to delay, so I think we need to move forward.
Any other comments?
I guess,
Some
yeah,
of your
I'm just,
concerns been addressed?
they have. I mean, in some ways, I totally agree that this is a parking lot that needs to be done. The timing, I'm actually surprised that I would think August is still a pretty high tourist time, where like February, you have a whole lot less stuff. Right, but it's all asphalt, so it's not a big deal in some ways, but I mean, so what? Yeah.
Yeah, so in the winter time, I can't remember the exact time, but the asphalt plant does shut down for a length of time during winter, and then you also have the cold temperatures and the wet, which creates problems for putting asphalt and putting down a solid subbase. But you are correct that economic activity, construction activity is really heating up around here. So as we put out and do engineering estimates and we look at timelines, when we go out and for contracts and when we execute contracts, that's going to have to be factored in our contracting construction plan to hit that time of the year when it's less activity.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
But weather, there's a reason why summer is the construction time, because it's perfect weather to do things.
So I would leave, it's between you and her.
I'm ready I make a motion to approve and authorize the city manager to award the base bid and sign a construction contract with Lakeside Industries for the Elks parking lot repair project CON-2017-28 for a contract amount of $66,178.20, including applicable taxes, and to make minor modifications to the contract.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Further questions? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg, for helping the discussion. That takes us to item J in our agenda, contracts and purchasing. And that would be starting with J1, a service agreement with Peninsula Area Public Access PAPA, seeking approval.
I don't want me to take that.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a little bit of a brief background. In September of 2015, the Council did designate Port Angeles Public Access as the provider of public, educational, and governmental programming using the city's cable TV channels that were allocated for such purposes. They did have a contract that expired, and we did do a 6-month extension. It expired in May, actually, and we did a 6-month extension, thinking at the time that we would be pretty much through negotiations on the current cable TV franchise agreement that we have with Wave. We are not through with the negotiations. And also, PAPA has run into some difficulty being able to apply for grants because they're unable to apply for grants when they don't have a contract that extends out for a certain period of time. I'm not going to go through PAPA's history as far as the successes they've had, what they've been able to accomplish. Those are outlined in the memo. But we are bringing forward a 5-year contract with PAPA to allow them to get out and go get some of the necessary grants so that they can bring PAPA to a new level. We also have written into the contract, even though it's a 5-year contract, there are certain annual performance requirements that they need to attain. And if they don't attain those performance requirements, then we can open the contract back up. But it is a 5-year contract with that in there. And there is one thing that I need to bring to your attention. Unfortunately, as we do with many contracts, when we take a contract and we revise it, we use the old version and we just make some updates on that. This particular contract probably went into previous years, and we revised it into a PAPA contract, and then we tried to do some revisions. And there were some formatting errors that occurred. There was even one section that should have been deleted that wasn't, because it pertained to the original contract, not the new one. And we did not review the contract before it went into the packet. We just assumed that everything happened the way it should have. And it didn't. So we did provide you by email an updated one. What we did do to make it convenient, though, you have on your dais a copy of the revised version with some modifications and some formatting changes and a few minor edit corrections. We put those in red lines so that you can immediately look at what those changes are compared to what you have in your packet. But again, we're recommending that you approve the contract, and the funding, of course, is going to be tied to whatever we come up with during the new franchise cable TV franchise agreement at such time we have successful negotiations. So I can also answer any questions, or even more appropriately, our Public Works Director, Greg Fulton, who is on the board of PAPA, he's the city's representative, can also answer any questions you may have.
So I really like this contract. I think PAPA's doing a great job with this. I am a little concerned, though, that we've not completed our agreement with Wave. And I know that the reason we extended that was so that both of these could coincide at the same time, so it would be absolutely transparent and clear what the amount of money they would be getting from the waive agreement. So that's something that we don't know at this point because we have not completed the agreement. And we're hoping that the agreement gets completed November, December, sometime at that point. So I don't like the lack of transparency that happens by saying, let's just do a 5-year contract. I would prefer that, and I had not known, I don't think it was in the report, about them not being able to get grants because of the length of the contract. So I'm just wondering if we could, like I said, I want everybody to know exactly what Papa is getting from the waive agreement, so that way it's completely transparent. And it's not just something, well, we're going to give them, if another group might have thought, well, we could do the same job, I didn't realize they were going to get this much money. They could have also applied for that. I mean, at this point, I know Papa's just done a phenomenal job. So I want to just state that for the fact. But I'm just wondering if we can make this contract potentially for the first year, wait till the agreement kicks in, then go ahead and extend it for the 4 years. But it becomes completely transparent as to what the group's going to get, so that there's no issues about that. So that's my recommendation. I would say that let's just do it for 1 year. And, whenever we get this agreement, that might give them enough time so that they can go ahead, go for grants. But I just would like to make it transparent so that everybody out there knows exactly what it is. And, yeah, that's good.
Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got 2 points. First, in regards to Councilmember Brooks' comments, the way I understand this would be in support of PAPA. I've never participated in grant writing, but if another entity that we're trying to support as a city is asking for a contract in order to qualify for some grants that they could possibly be involved with on the horizon, I think it would be in our best interest to support this entity, PAPA-TV, in their endeavors. My reason I actually raised my hand, though, was the board of directors. I understand Mr. Fulton is on the board as a city staff member, but we listened to someone, again, that's not a staff member of the city of Port Angeles speak to us about the William Shore Pool. I would like the mayor to give this opportunity for anyone that's a member of the public on the board of directors to address us in any concerns that they could have, that again, that we could try to help them craft a better support mechanism for them. So I just wanted that to go out to the community, that we're here to listen to you, and in my opinion, because we listened to someone address us regarding the pool, that right should also be given to the board of PAPA-TV.
I guess I would ask the council before I make some sort of decision, is there any opposition or discomfort? Is there a member of the, I don't see, I see one individual here from Papa. Are you comfortable with addressing Mr.?
You haven't asked.
You're welcome to come forward. If you'd like
I
to.
have not read the contract, sir.
No. Is there anybody else who's, Greg, you're a member of the board?
Yes, I am. If you want it from the staff member, along with the board member. One thing that we could do to answer or address Sissy's question is, when the waive contract is finalized and we do come up with that dollar amount, then we do an amendment to the PAPA contract, bring it back to City Council for approval, so that it is brought forth to the public as exactly how much PAPA could be receiving through the waive franchise, how it would be received, whether it be annually or however it's finally negotiated. And that would be one opportunity to bring it out to the public. But when you're going, we have had grants, a lot from the county government has provided two fairly large grants, but when you're going out to these larger grant opportunities, 50,000, 100,000, they're going to want to know that the organization is more secure than just 6 months, 12 months. They're going to want to know that it's many years of backing by municipality. So that's what we're looking for, is that ability to be able to state that.
Right, and like I said, we would have happily given it, because by now we should have had completed our waive contract, and we would have known. But it's been extended.
So one thing that might help the council, and I want to address it for the public too, on the issue of transparency. When we hopefully have successful negotiations for the cable TV franchise agreement, all elements of that agreement are discussed with the council in an open session, including the agreement, the portion of the agreement that talks about any funding that comes to the city, which we pass through to PAPA for public access. And so that discussion will occur. It will be fully vetted by the council. It will be completely transparent. I mean, everything will be known at that time, and the council will be able to make adjustments to that section or any other section that they feel, but realize that, you know, it could affect negotiations, but again, at the end of the day, it's the council's decision. So again, it's not that you're not going to have that information. It's not that it's not going to be communicated to you in an open session and be available to the public, because that's the other side of it. And truly moving forward with this, it is unfortunate that we haven't settled by now, but there are a lot of different elements, including the sale of waive. I mean, there were a lot of factors that were beyond anybody's control. All PAPA wants to do, is my understanding, is be able to move forward in a very positive direction, and they are looking at realizing that whatever funding they get is not going to be adequate to provide the services that they have a vision for the community. They're looking for that additional funding, and they want to aggressively pursue grants.
Deputy Mayor Kidd.
Yes, on the subject of transparency and finances going to Port Angeles, to PAPA. If on our revised version, on our dais, page 9, under section 14, annual reports, there's requirements A, B, and C. I would like to add D, which would be to their annual reports, a complete updated inventory of all equipment purchased with public funds. So when they get grants and they purchase the equipment, I would just like that added to their annual report, so we will be aware of their inventory that has been purchased with public funds. For the sake of transparency, I think that would be very most efficient. And I'd like to bring that for consideration as an amendment to the council.
And thank you, and I did get that information earlier, and I do agree that that would be an excellent addition. We could go ahead and provide that. If the council wants to add that, we could add that to that. And I would suggest we say either funded by or partially funded by those funds.
Funded by or partially funded by purchase with, okay.
I think that would be great. And I guess if we're going to go through the contract, I've got a couple comments, because on section 17, the annual plan and budget, it talks that they are going to go ahead and do one. Who is going to review this, and who is going to approve this budget? And so I was just curious, so they'll do one and they'll turn it into whom and how?
Yes,
does that
so
work?
back in September, I brought under, I think it was information, it was both, or actually it's April, I brought forth the annual report for 2016 and the plan for 2017. So I can bring that back and send it out as an email again, but it was in information, I believe it was in information.
So it doesn't get, I mean, we just get to see it, but it really, in some ways, there's no comment, because you guys are in somewhat separated. So if we get to see the annual budget, we get to see the report, but there's really no input from us, is that correct?
There was not, this past time was the first time we had done it, so we just brought it forward as an information packet to the council.
The direct answer is yes, that's correct. It is it's an organization like many other organizations. We do, we want to see their budget, but they have a board of directors. We have a representative on that board of directors, and they would go out, they're looking at getting grants, they have membership fees, they have a lot of things that they do, and where we weigh in is really on the performance side. How are they going to perform? What are we going to hold them accountable to? How they do that, that's what they have their directors for.
So who in staff is going to be holding them accountable?
Again, I would say that you hold me accountable, you're my board of directors and everybody else, and they have a board of directors also. So again, it's like many other organizations. They have a structure, and they have a lot of volunteers too, but they do have a structure, and again, we hold them accountable based on what we have in our contract and what we hold them under performance.
Right.
Well, since we're going to be getting a copy of it, we can look at it. If any of the council people do have a concern, I'm sure that we'll bring it to the attention of the city manager and ourselves when we discuss anything future. But I think that we don't need to manage that. I think we can just be aware of it. And if there's an issue, I'm sure politically we can bring it up.
There's one final thing I'd like to ask is about the copyright, because I know that we talked about records requests and whether, we currently have the voice recording of the city council meetings. I know they will be having a video copy of these city council meetings. Is that something that we may need to think about in the future as to records requests for the video portion of this? Will we ever, as city council, want to have a video copy of our meetings instead of just voice? And if so, can we come up with an arrangement? So that's just a question as to what might be the best way to think about that.
The way I understand this, and Bill's really looking at me thinking, what's he going to say? But the way I would answer this is that what they do on their end is not open to public records requests. They're doing it on their end. If we request a copy of a tape, or we store those tapes here, we get a copy, then it becomes part of a public document. It's something that we have for whatever purpose we're going to use it for, and it's opened up to public records requests.
So, but I guess my question to the council is, do we want to start having copies of the videos of our city council meetings and not just the voice? Because I think it's important. I mean, I know we went to voice. I think the next step is to go to video. But that could be a different discussion.
Germane to the contract for discussions, and that may be another discussion.
Yeah, that's part of the copyright, but
We don't really have a contract.
Just
How about the website?
Bill,
I better say that.
were you kind of seeking to take a moment to answer one of these questions that I have?
I'm sorry.
Were you wanting to weigh in on this discussion?
Well, I guess the first question is, does the council itself want to have video recordings of council meetings? And you don't do that now, at least as an official act. If you wanted to do that as an official act, that would be a decision that you would have to make first. Then, if you decided for whatever reason you wanted to have video, then you would have to decide how to do it. And I think there would be a couple of different ways to do it. You could contract with someone like Papa to do it, or you could arrange the city staff to install a video system in here that would just be proprietary to the city. And but either way, if you require that the city have
videos, those are subject to public records requests. So the first two questions are up to the council.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, can we get back on approval
No,
of the
I say we need to
I mean, we're.
say,
it's a-
that make the matter pertinent to
Right.
the issue at hand is approving a contract in some form this evening.
Right.
I think this is an appropriate discussion for us, best taken up at a later date. I think I saw Lee's hand and I also saw Brad. I'm not sure which came up first.
I'm going to withdraw, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to point out that we control the audio record. Papa is responsible for the content of their programs, and we don't have control over that. How they edit it or what they do. I don't think that it's the same. I agree with our attorney that if we're going to declare that to be a record, we need to do our own video or contract with someone like Papa to do it for us. But I don't think we should assume that their content is our record at this point.
Right. I totally, you're absolutely right about that. We can't assume that. I'm just thinking, in the future, because we're discussing this, we might want to have that discussion in the future as to, do we want a video?
Okay, further comments on this matter? Let's see if we can get to some agreement here on approving or amending. We have had a couple of suggestions to make some amendments to the contract, but do we need to have it read back in language as to?
Well, I will be happy to read that under section 4 annual reports, there's A, B, C. I'd like to add section 1D, a complete updated inventory of all equipment funded by or partially funded by public funds added to their annual report requirement.
I think that's a good idea. That's good.
Seems to be a virtual unanimity on that matter. Thank you, Sherry.
That would be an amendment
Read
to
it up to
the contract.
the
Yeah, I'd like this not to be anonymous or unanimous rather. Is this something that we're requiring our other civic groups, our other civic providers to do? I just want, again, for the record, that I think if we're actually proposing a change to the document, I'd like to see an actual proper procedural vote gone through. It's disappointing that we don't have a more independent, robust discussion from a member of their board of directors here this evening, because we're talking about stuff that appears to me is well beyond the contract document. So I think what I'd like to see us to do is stick to what has been spoken about previously, again, because we're missing a couple of key players in this. So again, I'd like to see if there's any alterations to the proposal, that we go through a vote procedure on that, please.
If I could just, from a Papa standpoint, the addition of that listing of equipment and use of the public funds, we do that already because the WAVE contract specifically says that the money that comes from WAVE to the city, to Papa, can only be spent for equipment and facility. And so we do keep separate books for those funds that do come from the city.
Then it wouldn't be a problem.
No.
If you already do it, if we add that, it wouldn't be a problem, is what I'm hearing.
Correct.
Okay, good.
So, Mr. Mayor, I withdraw that request to actually go through a vote procedure. Thank you for that information, Mr. Fulton. I'm not here to put a bunch of more requirements in the way that's going to help this group be successful in our community. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we're at the point where I would look for a motion to move forward here some way or another.
Let me try this, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve and authorize the city manager to sign this city/Papa service agreement to allow Papa to utilize funding and cable channels authorized as part of the current cable franchise agreement, including amendment 1D to the annual report section as previously stated, and to make any minor modifications to the agreement if necessary.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion as stipulated, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think that was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
And Greg, thank you for your input, wearing two hats this evening. All right. Let me get back to my... That takes us to item 2 under contracts and purchasing, Tumwater Bridge Rehabilitation Project TR02-16, rejection of submitted bid. It's J18 in our packet.
Mr. Mayor, we had kind of a robust discussion about an earlier contract. I think in this case, I move that we reject the single bid for the Tumwater Bridge Rehabilitation Project, TR0216, and have staff rebid it, the work at a later date when we might get a more favorable.
Second. Withdraw my second.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded. Any further questions? Lee?
Craig, can you answer the question, when was the engineer's estimate established for this project?
It was quite a while, and I can't offhand, 6 months at least probably. We've been working on this for quite a while.
And to be correct in the description of the Tumwater Street Bridge, we're talking about one of the new bridges on 8th Street?
No, this is Tumwater Street, so it's the street just past Tumwater Truck Route. It's an old concrete bridge, and the joints are failing and need to be replaced. What we were kind of interested in seeing is that an asphalt company proposed as the prime and bridge companies proposed as the sub, where we would like to see it reversed. The bridge company is the prime contractor and an asphalt company is the subcontractor. So that's what we'll look at, how we put it out and the timing and when is a better time to put this out.
Who's got the bigger amount of work when you start talking about different contractors? Wouldn't the asphalt contractor have a larger portion?
No, I believe the dollar amount, it was the joint repairs that had the largest dollar amount, and that's where we saw the greatest difference in engineering estimate versus the proposals.
Right, so how do you think this will affect our property if we were to postpone this? Can you walk us through as a council, describe this?
So, water is beginning to penetrate through the joints, which will eventually get into the concrete and rebar and continue to erode it. It's not a critical project that has to go immediately, but it is a maintenance project that we need to get done and reseal the bridge so it can continue on for quite a few more years. So putting it off for 6 months is not going to be a problem.
Actually, if we put it off for 6 months, then we're gonna be into there'll be asphalt, I assume, that'll go down?
Yes, there's that asphalt overlay, so yes, that will be an issue, ensuring we're not into the cold winter season, and it could possibly just put it off into the spring when things dry off, but it's warmer, but the construction season really hasn't kicked off. So we have a little more discussions to go with contractors to see what's best.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that my experience in construction is the asphalt plant generally shuts down around October, and then we're into the winter months, so we're looking at our infrastructure continuing to suffer until we actually seal that metal from further corrosion, which is all part of the structural problem underneath all of our roads and bridges. So it would be nice if this could be turned around and gather something more and try our best for preventive maintenance, though this summer, I believe, is probably the largest construction period on the peninsula, to my knowledge, as far as road repair. So we are in a quandary. We don't have available contractors, outside contractors, so Has staff thought about getting the sealant, putting a sealant crew together for redoing these expansion joints?
You know, I think we'll be looking at a number of alternatives, but we'd like to take a crack at trying to figure out why the bids are so high, and can we put it off and get a better pricing at a different part of the construction season?
All right, thank you.
Mr. Collins?
As part of my motion, I made the assumption that we may be re-looking at our estimate and how we're bidding the project, and it could go up so that it's not, there isn't a gap between the estimate and what our bids are. So my assumption is that we need to figure out what's wrong with the estimate as well as get to a more favorable time. And, you know, it might be nice if we made it clear we want the engineer to be the lead on it rather than the asphalt.
One more, you know, when we did get these high bids, we did consult with the designer of record, and they felt that the bids were far out of the norm of what they should be. So it was not just our city engineers, but it was the designers of record who agreed that the prices were too high and we need to look at another way forward.
Okay, further comments or questions? Motion is on the table. Seconded. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
It takes us to J3, harbor cleanup NRD process anchor QEA. Amendment to the Exhibit C work order number 4, seeking approval.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to have to recuse myself for this cleanup.
Mr.
I work with
So you guys
Because
go
of also.
excuse Councilmember Case and Councilmember Cook. And the council packets will be on J19. Okay, Mr. Dorr.
Yes, thank you. This proposed contract amendment and the next two all have to do with the harbor cleanup project. And the first contract here, and these are all amendments to existing contracts. These items have all come before you previously. And as we have done with some other large city projects, these are being done in phases. And that enables the council to keep track of where we are and where we're going as we work through this very large cleanup process. So the first contract that we have here is with Anchor, and that is a contract to do the next phase of a sand cap pilot project, which is being carried out in the harbor right now. And the purpose of that project is to demonstrate that it is feasible to place a protective sand cap in the harbor at a thinner layer than the regulators are accustomed to see. Our consultants have a high degree of faith that this will work. If it does work, it's going to be a big money saver. Then the next two contracts both have to do with the overall harbor cleanup process, the writing of the RIFS, which is the goal of the current order or agreed order that we have with the Department of Ecology. And you might recall that in the past, we have been working with the Department of Ecology on a white paper. And we have gotten to the point where I think we have gotten the full amount of benefit out of that white paper process that we're going to get. And so our intention is not to complete the white paper process, but to go directly into writing the RIFS. And these two amendments are to allow us to do that, to actually stop the white paper process, go forward and write the RIFS, which is the final step of our current agreed order of the Department of Health. So in a nutshell, that's what those three contracts are. And again, they're all just continuations of work that we have been doing in the past. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from members of the council? Yeah.
No, I'm prepared to move forward with the recommendation or a motion.
Okay.
On the first one, I move that the city, we authorize the city manager to execute on behalf of the city work order number 4 to Exhibit C of the agreement and to approve minor modifications to work order number 4 as needed. This is part of our shared work with the other PLPs. That's our share of it. It also would save us money in the long run if this is successful. So I think this is a prudent step to take.
Second the motion as read.
Okay. Motion is made and seconded. Are there further questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, if any? Okay, thank you. That takes us to J4, to clean up the 6th Amendment to the Professional Services Agreement with the Integral Consulting. Again, seeking approval of that. Bill, again, back to you.
I'm sorry, I just wrapped all three of the contracts up.
Oh, you want it, okay.
Yeah, I don't have anything
You
more.
don't need to do it. Are there any questions, Bill, regarding this 6th Amendment to the Professional Services Agreement with Integral Consulting, or in essence of time and expediency, as it would also pertain to J5, the Harbor Cleanup Project Process Change Order number 6?
Do we need separate motions?
Well, do we need separate
That's fine.
motions?
Yes, let's have
Yeah,
separate.
I'm saying,
We
okay.
really, I think. we need
Then
separate
I move to authorize city manager to enter into the 6th Amendment to Professional Services Agreement with Integral Consulting, Inc., and to make minor modifications to the agreements if necessary.
I'll second it, and note that this would allow us to move forward. We're kind of in a perpetual loop at the moment, and we need to have progress to clean up our harbor.
Okay, motion is on the table, seconded. All those in favor of the matter, please say aye.
Aye.
Now that takes us to J5, again, the Harbor Cleanup Project Process Change Order number 6 to Work Order number 2 to Environmental Services Agreement with Floyd Snyder approval. Requested.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the city manager to approve change order number 6 to work order number 2, expanding the scope of work and budget as shown in the attached amendment exhibit.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded regarding J5, seeking approval with Floyd Snyder. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, if any? Okay, thank you very much. We need to retrieve our council members. So we're now to J6, it's been added to. This is an HVAC improvements at the senior center.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Recently, we received 2 bids for 2 projects. One is for the HVAC compressor replacement in the senior center, and the second one is for a new ductless heating and cooling system at the Port Angeles Fine Arts Center. This project will allow us to remove the old electric boiler that currently heats the facility. The reason we put this on as a late item is because we want to get the project completed before the 2018 Paint the Peninsula, which is in the middle of this month, so we can keep the facility nice and cold for our guests. So tonight I'm asking council to approve a construction contract for $25,180.24 with Airflow Heating Company.
Any questions? Cory?
Actually, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So we've got an electric boiler, which means we've got a hydronic system within the Fine Arts Center?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I guess I'm looking at it again from a professional's point of view, is that if there's an electric boiler that's being replaced with another piece of equipment that's actually a heat pump, and that'll be a single source containing a different way of distributing the heat throughout the building. I'm concerned that the Fine Arts Center, are we going to have future costs in the future, Cory, as for possibly the removal of a piping system that's no longer utilized?
No, we'll be able to reuse or get rid of the electric boiler, and what we will eventually do is add a few picowatts so we have a secondary heat source, and so that's what we plan on doing this winter.
And I just guess I ask only to maybe help us identify if there are future costs associated with this heating system. That's the only reason I brought that forward. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't see any other hands going up, so.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve and authorize the city manager to award and sign a construction contract for the base bid for the Senior Center and Port Angeles Fine Arts Center project, PK 0517, the amount of $25,180.24 with Airflow Heating Company, including applicable taxes, and to make minor modifications to the contract if necessary.
Second that motion, second that motion is read. Thanks.
All those any further questions before I go for the question?
Just a quick one, I'm sorry. I know that sometimes emergency things come up. Was this one of those things where things failed, like right away, not that long ago? Or is it something that was coming and it's like, uh-oh, we better get to it?
Yes, as you guys know, we've had multiple projects coming through our department, and so it was one of those things that we had actually planned trying to get done in June, but it was just not possible. So we were able to get it in within the time frame that the Fine Arts Center really wanted it done.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. I don't see any other questions or comments.
Yeah.
So all those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Maybe to help out the council a bit of why this became a late item, I think that's where you were heading with that, and that's a great question. But I think originally, well, I know originally when the Parks Department was looking at this, they thought it would fall just below the city manager's authority. It's within our budget. We have to, work our budget, even with the reduced budget that we're going to bring forward to council and talk about our 18-month budget process on next council meeting. So it was in the budget, but it fell just outside the city manager's authority, and they did have that timing for it. So if they would have known early on that it would have been on that other end of just over rather than just under, it would have come to the council, and we apologize for that. But as I sat down with the Parks Director, the timing was important, and it was just felt to be one of those items that we should bring forward.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Okay, Lee, do you have we're at council reports. Do you have anything you wanted to report?
No, thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I don't remember what it was. Let's start over here with Brad. We're at section for council reports.
Well, I'm happy to report that this coming Saturday, I'll be at the farmer's market. It'll be the one time this year where it's warm that I'm at the farmer's market. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't know who's joining me, but I'm sure I'm going to enjoy myself much more than I did in February and this coming November. So I'm really excited about it Saturday. I also need to let you know I'll be in Canada at our next meeting, and I'm working with staff to figure out how to make a call in for that. It's not easy to do that, but hopefully I'll be able to call in for the next meeting.
Avoid, it could be an expensive contact.
Yeah. That's part of the problem of being a council person is you got to pay for that if you're not here, right?
Well, I don't know, it just, there probably is a way. I know that, you know, some phone systems that for a relatively small fee, you can avoid moving charges.
But I haven't missed, in 8 years, I haven't missed very many council meetings, so
No, you
I
can
do
do that.
want to call in if I can.
You've been very good about that, Brad.
This is my annual summer vacation week, so.
Dan?
So last week, the Clallam County EDC held a workshop here in town at the Board of Commissioners office at the county, and that was part of a 3-workshop series, one held in Forks and one in Sequim. And although I didn't go to the ones in Forks and Sequim, I was told that they were very well attended. Lots of city council people at those. There's a lot of public. In Forks, there wasn't as many people, but I understand there was upwards of 15 or 16. At this meeting we had, it looked like about 40, something like that. Lots and lots of energy. It was very, very high interest and enthusiasm for some of the things that the EDC is doing, and starting to take some, get some good traction in some new directions. So I was happy to be there and hear what people had to say. A lot of good feedback with regards to ideas and directions that the public felt that the EDC should take up, and I think we'll probably be seeing some really good things in the future. I know they were excited. Just if nothing else, they came in for their request to the county for their funding, and they actually reduced the amount of money that they were asking for. So that's a good indication to see that, and that's a good start to the process.
Thank you for being there, Tim. Deputy
No
Mayor,
report this evening.
I have no report.
So a quick report, the Dick Brown Memorial Tournament is this weekend at Lincoln Park. The concession stand will be open, and anybody that wants to come out and support our kids. The fields look great. Corey's crew I've seen out there at different times. Been to a lot of tournaments in the last month or so, and Port Angeles, their fields are probably up there at the top compared to some of the other ones we've been to.
Assistant.
No report?
Okay, well, that takes us to L, the information from our city manager. I know you have a couple of reports you'd like to share.
Just a couple. So there are some reports that I'm not going to be going over in your packet, and of course, as always, you can get a hold of the appropriate director, and they would be glad to go over any questions you have with those reports. On number 4, on the open public meetings, there is a memo in your packet, and the mayor did a good job of explaining that before public comment period, and I don't need to go over that again. But if you have any questions, again, Attorney Bloor would be happy to answer those at a later time. I am going to be going over in a minute an update on our computer security, what I called computer security confidence, but actually it's to update you on the likely data breach of our computer system. But before that, I have one item that Attorney Bloor will be just briefing you on very quickly, and it was sent to you by email, and that is on the city's motion to reconsider to the National Park Service. So, Bill?
I wanted to advise the council on a matter relating to our claim concerning the Park Service and the Elwha water facilities. You recall that last year the city filed a claim against the Park Service relating to the water facilities that were constructed in connection with the removal of the Elwha dams. And you may further recall that back in 1992, when Congress passed the legislation authorizing the removal of the dams, it was with the condition that if the dams were removed, that the government must assure that the city's water supplies were protected on the Elwha River, and that included the quantity of the water available and the quality of the water available. Well, fast forward to last year, and the Park Service wanted to transfer those facilities to the city, then they would become our responsibility. And the city is not willing to accept those facilities in the condition that they're in now. So we began negotiating with the Park Service to resolve that issue. Unfortunately, time passes, and in order to avoid any claim of the statute of limitations, the city filed a claim, and that was done last August, about a year ago. And the Park Service has the option of rejecting the claim or doing nothing. And what we had hoped was that they would do nothing, because that would just let us continue our negotiations, try to work out an amicable settlement. Unfortunately, what the Park Service did decide to reject the claim. They rejected the claim in February of this year. Now, under the administrative rules, that gives the city, that puts a time limit on the city. We have 6 months from the date they rejected the claim to do one or two things. One of three things, actually. One is we can file litigation, and we don't really want to sue the Park Service. We just want to come to an agreement with them to resolve the issues that we have with the water facilities. That's one option, file litigation. Number two is to file a request for reconsideration. That's what I did this week. I filed that request for reconsideration. That gives us additional time, and we will continue to work on trying to reach a negotiated settlement. The third option was to just drop the claim. And it's not feasible for the city to do that, because it's the way that the facilities are configured right now, it would be far too expensive for the city to operate. So realistically, by filing the motion for reconsideration, we've bought some additional time. How much time, I'm not sure. If the Park Service chooses to reject the claim again, then we have 6 months from the time they reject the claim, and we'll be in the same situation, where we have those three choices. Drop the claim, file litigation. Well, two choices, because those are the only choices we have. We would have the second time this comes around. So I just wanted you to be aware that we did file that claim. It was done this week. And in the meantime, we are attempting to continue to work in good faith with the Park Service to find some resolution to this dispute.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, Mayor and Council, what I wanted to do was give you a verbal update on the recent events. And again, just talking about the likely data breach of our computer system. And just a little bit of a brief background. We did receive 3 emails from customers that was sent to our utility email address, and that occurred this Sunday before last on July 23rd. And we received those obviously on July 24th when staff came to work. And these 3 emails, basically the individuals felt that their cards were compromised after paying their utility bill and online. And one customer stated that they had only had their card for a couple of weeks, and one of the major activities was using it at the city. The other thing, though, was that same weekend there were a lot of blog activity over this issue, and it came to our attention, one of our staff members alerted us to it, that there were hundreds of posts on Facebook referring to the issue, and one of those customers that was on the blog stated that they only used their card for paying their electric bill online. And of course, those are major concerns, and we're going to get into that in a minute. You know, looking at that, you know, when we have expectations and we use our credit cards online, when I thought about it and we were talking about it, there are a couple just basic, what I would call core expectations that we all have. One of those things is that we expect when we use our cards, our credit cards online, that our information is protected. And then we also have an expectation that in that rare case something does happen, I believe that the public expects us to respond appropriately. And we're going to talk about both of those expectations. So we do have reasonable protections in place, and we have robust firewall protection. Routinely, IT is talking about things that goes way over my head, but what I get out of it is we have a lot of firewall protection. We routinely update our software, which has all the latest security features, as well as it's more efficient. And we have multi-level virus protection and scans that occur routinely. And of course, we have, for this type of activity, we have focused encryption to protect that data that is on the computer. Not unlike most other organizations that accept credit cards. So how did we respond when those 3 emails came to us and when we were alerted to the blog activity? Well, obviously that was of major concern, and we immediately did certain things. We looked at our servers. We physically inspected those servers, and we did see that there was an unauthorized file on those servers. And with that and the activity we were seeing, we immediately shut down our web server. We shut down all card-taking credit card services at City Hall, and we immediately sent out notifications to each one of our utility customers, about 9,400 of those. And unfortunately, the quickest way to do that was to hand stuff, hand label 9,400 envelopes. And we did that. Staff did a stellar job. They stayed till really late at night, and the next morning they all got mailed. We also, during that time, sent out a press release, and unfortunately, that press release that same day did not get to the PDN until their deadline had passed. I received a call from Paul Gottlieb, who's in our back here. We had a very passionate discussion. He informed me that they are there to help, and I messed up, and I did, and I take responsibility for that. We should have got it out a few hours earlier. Didn't have to be tied up as neatly, but we just needed to get the basic information out. But I really appreciate the PDN and their help wanting to ensure we get that information out right away. We also notified law enforcement, which included the FBI, and the FBI has assigned a case number so that, in fact, if it is malicious, obviously it's a crime. We notified the Attorney General's office, we notified the appropriate financial institutions, And we also notified our risk pool, our insurance, which is Washington City's Insurance Authority, or WCIA. They have insurance that they subscribe to for that type of activity, which is AIG. And we were in communications first with WCI, then AIG directly, and they recommended specialized counsel. And that means a law firm that's all they do. They deal with this every day, have multiple clients, many much bigger than the city of Port Angeles. So our customer communication, we had 3 press releases that went out that first week. We updated or provided updates on our city's website. We provided our citizens with the phone number and email of a single point of contact. We wanted to ensure that there was one person in the city, that's what they dealt with. There weren't multiple people giving different information. We could give the correct information to one person, and they dealt with those customers. And also, they maintained a list of all those customers who felt they might have been affected. And of course, a lot of the calls were just information calls, weren't customers that felt that they had potentially been affected. We got hold of AIG and an insurance claim was filed. Again, it's a $25,000 deductible for the activities we're involved in right now. And we did receive a letter acknowledging our claim, and it covers costs for conducting the investigation, retaining specialized counsel, providing customer notifications to those that are eventually we know that have been impacted by this. It provides for identity theft protection and credit monitoring for those customers who, again, have identified that their data have been compromised, certain things that we will do for them. And then the cost to restore and recreate our electronic data. And that's a lot of activities involving our computer system. We did, right away, we did hire a forensic resource. They were approved by our insurance companies because as we move forward with some of these items that become very expensive, we want to make sure that we can be reimbursed under our claim for that after we complete our deductible. And they will be identifying the problem, and they will be able to identify the customers by the dates affected and the customers. And also, they will be working at cleaning up our servers. And they will likely be able to provide us with other information that can be useful as we move forward.
Dan, are we asking folks who've been affected to call the city, or is that going to be easily observable from the data?
That will be, we should be able to identify that based on what, they should be able to go in and identify the potential date range, or the date range that this, if we have a problem, the date range of that problem, and they should, within that, they should be able to identify the customers that were affected. And that's one of the deliverables that we expect to get out of the forensic team. And we also made sure that we had copied a portion, actually the whole server that was potentially at risk. And we did that because, again, if it is a crime, if it is malicious, we want to make sure that as people now are going in and modifying things, that we actually have a documented, what the files were before people went in and changed those, preserve a crime scene, basically. And so one of the things that we wanted to bring forward is that, unfortunately, no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do with all those reasonable protections in place, on rare occasion things do happen. And these are just some of the data breaches in our area within the last 4 months. One as recent as roughly a couple weeks ago. And the Pacific Science Center, Washington State University, Metro Parks in Tacoma, and the Seattle Housing Authority. Things do happen. One of the things that this did not come from our insurance company, it did not come from the specialized law firm that we talked to. came out of Port Angeles. One of the priorities that we had outside of the initial couple of priorities was to make sure that we maintained an empathetic attitude. And what I mean by that, we realize that this is a major inconvenience for everybody, for our customers primarily. And not only is it an inconvenience, if in fact their data had been compromised, it goes beyond an inconvenience. It's kind of gets to your core. And we wanted to make sure we could do whatever we could to minimize that inconvenience and that feeling. So one of the things that we made a decision that until this is resolved, we are going to be suspending all late fees, and there will be no utility delinquency notices going out. The last thing we want is somebody that attempted to pay their bill online with their credit card, and we had to hold off on taking that because of the issue we have right now, and then they get a delinquency notice.
How many of our customers pay by credit card?
Roughly about 1,500 is what the information I was given, but it could be a little higher than that too.
The payments vary monthly, but we can have between 1,500 and 3,000. It really depends on the cycle billings and how they hit. So we're looking at potentially about 1,500 right now that may be affected. We're not sure.
But we made the decision, we don't even want to impact 2 or 3 if we can avoid it. If something happens, we will quickly correct it because we're doing the best job we can, but realizing, that this doesn't happen every day, and we're just hoping that by doing a blanket policy on this until it's resolved, that we capture everybody. One of the other things is that I think it's really important that we really thank our community. They've been very good during a very difficult time. We received a lot of calls, and they've all been very supportive. They obviously had concerns, but they understood the situation and they wanted to provide any assistance they could by giving information. But most of all, almost all of them have been understanding, and we really appreciate that. We want to do whatever we can. And one of the quotes from the blog, these things happen. It's best to make sure that all of your cards have chips. Your bank and credit card companies monitor and provide you with fraud alerts. But I think what did it for me is that they realize that as much as we try sometimes, and we really do try hard to prevent that, as many other organizations do, something can happen. And a big thank you to the community for their understanding in this effort. One of the other things too, and I wanted to kind of conclude on this, is that it's really not what happens to us as much as it is how we deal with it. A really good quote is, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. And there were a couple things that are going to come out of this. It's not an event that we wished happened. We did not want this to happen, but we will be stronger at the end of the day because of it. We are having our system scrutinized like it's never been scrutinized before. We are opening every part of our system up, and even things that, we want them to look at everything. And at the end of the day, I know that we're going to be able to benefit from this event by ensuring that we have not only the best practices, but probably the very best practices because of the resources that we have available to us that would not ordinarily be available to us. The other thing, though, that came out of this, we're used to, as an organization, responding to emergencies. Public safety does that every day. From an emergency management perspective, we do that on occasion, and we feel fairly comfortable with it because we get some experience in doing that. What we've never had happen is an emergency event that included a department like the finance department, and that really was an emergency response handled in many of the same ways. And we put together immediately an overhead team to deal with this that included finance, really heavily the IT department and finance, risk management, which is HR, legal, the police department, city manager's office, and the city clerk, specifically to help out with PIO duties. But we put together a team, they've been meeting every day, And the one thing that I want the council to know, we've already been into this about 3 days when we talked to our specialized counsel, which is pretty early on to do that, but in working with the insurance company, we're able to do that. They started telling us all the things we should do and could consider. After about 5 minutes of listening to them go on and on, we told them, stop, let's tell you what we've done and then tell us what we should do. And when we were going through all the things we've done in fairly good detail, there was silence on the phone for a short time, and then they found one little thing that maybe they just had to throw out there because they get paid big bucks for this. So, and they do it every day, we don't. My point is that I'm really proud of the team that's put together and the approach that they're taking and considering our community, and but we realize that we have a lot to do yet. And so we just wanted to update the council, give you a verbal update on what's going on. There is no information back that we can relate to the council right now based on the forensic specialist that's going through our system. But if there are any really technical questions, I can guarantee you I'm not the one to ask.
Well, I have a very technical question. When will we allow credit card payments again?
We don't know yet, and it's we are looking at a backup right now so that we talked about it today, and based on the backup, we should be able next week, even if we have to go to Plan B, we should be able to start accepting over-the-counter credit cards sometime next week. But that's the backup plan. We're hoping that we have enough information tomorrow that we can do the primary plan with the same date, but we just don't have to use the same type of backup system and bring stuff in. But we do have a backup plan. We're thinking about that. We don't want to wait until it gets down the road. And we'll be working with our insurance company to see if those costs can be covered, and we think they could be, so.
I want to say we appreciate the response. It was phenomenal. I know our household was affected by that, and so, you know, having to get new credit cards, that was an issue, but, you know, having the letter and the whole thing come back, it was just perfect. So thank you.
Any other member of the council have a question on
I
this?
just wanted to thank staff for being quick to act on this and being thorough. The community appreciates it, and I do too. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you, and all of you who have helped. That takes us to the second public comment period. Anybody in the audience remaining wishes to address the council at this point in time?
Could you please, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Esteemed
Your
council members.
name and address, please.
Daniel Myrick, also known as Nobody. My address is Port Angeles General Delivery, also known as Homeless. We had a touching human moment here earlier, and that's what I wanted to talk about, was being human. I realized that we think we're much more evolved than animals as humans. I mean, for example, animals believe in a pecking order, believe there's a greater and a lesser animal. And we say that they're equal. As humans, we're all equal. And animals, they like to grab the carcass and run off into the bush with it. And as people, we all sit down at the table together. Again, it sort of signifies our equality. And in a beast's mind, it really likes its territorialism. It'll violently defend it without any logic or rationale. And in our human mind, we don't differ at all. And so, I'd like to remind us all that we share something here. It's called space-time construct. And you can't own it. The only thing tangible that you can hold on to, you possess it with your life. And it's intangible. And we're all equal in this space-time construct because we're all here in it. And it must be shared by us. And I'd like to remind the community that is a gracious and beautiful, blessed community, that a kind word is never wasted. and a kind act is never forgotten. And so practice kindness amongst yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Those were inspiring words.
Thank you for likewise inspiring me, sir. The community I'm talking about.
Is there anybody else who wishes to take a role here? Yes.
David Mabry, 1014 Georgiana, and I'm not saying that you're boring. It's just that I have a lot of reading to do, so I was reading. I'm actually reading the Paris Accord, and I want to read Section 5, Paragraph 134. Non-party stakeholders welcomes, Paragraph 134, welcomes the efforts of all non-party stakeholders to address and respond to climate change, including those of civil society, the private sector, financial institutions, cities, and other subnational authorities. Paragraph 135 invites the non-party stakeholders referred to in paragraph 134 above to scale up their efforts and support actions to reduce emissions and/or build resilience and decrease vulnerability to the adverse effects of climate change, and demonstrate these efforts via the non-state actor zone for climate action platform. Paragraph 136 recognizes the need to strengthen knowledge, technologies, practices, and efforts of local communities and indigenous peoples related to addressing and responding to climate change, and establishes a platform for the exchange of experiences and sharing of best practices on mitigation and adaptation in a holistic and integrated manner. Paragraph 137 also recognizes the important role of providing incentives for emissions reduction activities, including tools such as domestic policy and carbon pricing. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Could I make one comment real quick before we adjourn? I was just noticing a young man back there in a Boy Scout uniform, and he's been so patiently watching the meeting. Just wanted to thank you for being here, probably part of maybe a merit badge thing, or something like that. Please come back.
I would second the Councilmember Gaines' comments to you. As a merit badge counselor in the community, citizenship in the community, and that's probably why you're here.
Well, I'm here for the communications merit badge. I actually have to attend a public meeting, and I figured that as council meeting would do.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for being a Boy Scout. Are you striving to be an Eagle Scout?
Yes, sir. I'm working on my last requirement to be a Life Scout, and that's just gets me closer to Eagle. So.
Super.
It's a statistical fact that those young men who have become Eagle Scouts at time of resume submittal and job interviews rank better in their interviews than those that don't have that on their resume. You're doing a great job.
Second the motion to adjourn.
Motion been made and seconded. We adjourn this meeting at 8:05. Thank you all of you for being here.